Alright guys, this video we're going to start graphing where we have the equation in terms of r and theta, so it's in terms of the polar coordinate system. But what we're going to do is we're going to convert, you can see I have a lot of space between the equation and the coordinate system. We're going to convert r and theta and we're going to change it to x and y. And the ones that we're going to do, we're going to do 1 and 2, and the next page we're going to do number 4. We're going to see it's happen if you ever have r equals and you have either sine or cosine on the other side, you're going to get a circle, right? You can kind of tell that's the title of this video. So we're going to graph circles and we're going to show the work, and we're going to go back to completing the square. I know we did that, I think, right after Christmas break when we graphed conic sections. All right, so let's kind of zero in here. Let's look at number 1. All right, so we can show the work. All right, where it says r equals 4 cosine of theta. Well, what's the easiest way to get x and y? Well, I know that r squared, that equals x squared plus y squared when we drew out the right triangle. So I can get an r squared by multiplying both sides of this equation by r. So, right, if I do that, r times r is the r squared. And then when I do this here, I'm going to have, instead of writing r times 4, I'm going to have 4 times r times cosine of theta. All right. Now, as we said, this r squared, I'm going to replace this with x squared plus y squared. Now, I want to get everything. I want to get rid of all the r's and the thetas and replace them with x's and y's. Okay, and the other thing we have here is, I wrote this r next to cosine for a reason. Remember, r cosine of theta, or r times cosine of theta, equals x. So what I underlined there in red, I just replaced with x. So this is going to equal 4x. All right, just like that, I got rid of r, I got rid of theta, and I replaced it with x's and y's. And then since we both have x's and the y's squared, we don't have any fractions, this is going to give us a circle. And we have to know the center of the circle, and we have to know the radius. So then what we're going to do is we're going to move this over, and we're going to complete the square. But we're only going to complete the square with the x's because there's no y. It's just a y squared. So I'm going to group the x's together. We're at x squared plus 4x, and then plus y squared equals 0. All right, so completing the square, remember, this is where we're going to complete the square just with the x's. And I already have a 1x squared, so I don't have to pull anything out. I can only complete the square when I have the leading coefficient to be 1, which I do have in this case with the 1x squared. So this is where we're going to have the x squared plus 4x. Oops. Right, remember, I put a plus. Right, I put a number in the box. And then I put plus y squared. Okay. And then to compensate, I'm going to put the same number on this side, right? So it's like a balance. Now remember, completing the square, this is where I take half of the middle term, which in this case, half of 4 is 2, and then we square it. So it's really doing this, right? Remember, half of that and square it, 2 squared, this is 4. So to compensate, this is also 4. So this allows me, I can factor this. That factors to x plus 2 quantity squared. Should give me a perfect square if I complete the square correctly. Then I have plus y squared equals 4. All right. Now, if you remember from graphing circles, there's only 2 things you really have to know to graph it. The center, and the center, it's always the opposite value here, so it's going to be negative 2. Well, there's nothing in there, so I don't have a vertical shift, so it's 0. And then remember, this always equals r squared. So in this case, r is equal to 2. All right. Graphing is going to be the real easy part. It's just the whole steps of how to get rid of r and theta, replace with x and y. You're going to complete the square, and then you're going to graph. So the graphing is going to be the easiest part. So when I graph, let's see here, negative 2, 0. All right, I always put the center first. My radius is 2. Let's put this in a different color. So from the center, right, I just move up 2. I move to the right 2, you're going to have a point at the origin. I'm going to move down 2, here you're going to have a point, and you're going to go to the left 2. All right, so all those 4 points, right, I go up 2, I go to the right 2, so I'm at the origin, I go down 2, right there, I go to the left 2. All right, and then this is my circle right there. All right, so that would give me number 1. All right, I'm going to move. I think I'm just going to do number 2 because I think getting to number 4, I might put that on a separate video. So let's move over to 2. Now 2, instead of having cosine, there's a sine in it. And as I said, as long as you have r equals, if you have sine or cosine or a combination of sine and cosine, it's always going to give us a circle. Now, you guys, you can literally look at number 1, and I'm going to do the same exact steps. So you can see the first thing I did was I multiplied both sides of the equation by r, so I got this r squared right there. I'm going to do the same exact thing for number 2. All right, so number 2, let's put this in red. So I'm going to multiply the left and the right side by r. So on the left side, r times r is r squared. The right side is going to give me -2 times r times the sine of theta. Okay, and then remember this r squared, when I convert it to rectangular, it's the same as x squared plus y squared. What stands out here is, remember, r times sine of theta, that equals y in the rectangular coordinate system. So this is just going to be -2y. Now from here, the only difference is since I have a y, I'm only going to complete this square. When I bring this over, I'm going to add 2y. I'm only going to complete the squares for the y's. Because for the x's, well, I don't have any x's, I just have x squared. So you know that the x value for the center of this circle is going to be 0. All right. Okay, so let's bring that -2y over to the left side, so we're going to add it. So we're going to have y squared plus 2y equals 0. Okay, let's complete that square for the y squareds. Okay, so put y squared plus 2y, put plus, and then when we complete the square, we'll put that number in the box. To compensate, we'll put that same number on the other side. All right, so if I take half of the middle term, it's 1, and then we square it, whoops, and then 1 squared is 1. So we're going to get 1 here, we're going to get 1 here. Then most of our work's done. Now after I complete the square, I can factor this, and it should give me a perfect square of a binomial. And it does. It gives me 1 plus 1 quantity squared, which equals 1. This is the standard form of a circle. And then the 2 main things I need, the center for this circle is going to be 0. And it's always the opposite value here, which is -1. Now remember, this is always r squared. But even when I take the square root of 1, it still gives me 1. So the radius is 1. All right, that's the hardest part. The easiest part is to take the center and the radius and graph it, which is what we'll do right now. All right, so we always plot the center first. Right, the center's at 0, -1, which is right here. And this is going to be really a unit circle. It's just kind of shifted down. The radius is only 1, so this is going to be very tiny right here. So right here's the center. So the radius is 1. I'm just going to go to the right one. I'm just going to go up 1, have a point, to the left 1, and down 1. All right, so you can see how the origin, there's a reason for that. The origin is on this circle as well as it was on the first. And I go down 1, then I go to the right one. Connect it, and there's our circle right there. All right, so you can kind of see the steps for both of these problems were the same. You started out by multiplying both sides by r, so it gave you an r squared. And then eventually you completed the square, and you got this circle in standard form. Find the center, the radius, and then you graph.